I've always prided myself in recognizing potential, which is why I personally interview senior executives such as yourself, said Adam from across the dinner table. Barring Emma, the company is the most important thing in my life, and I need my senior team to be both loyal and extraordinary. I'd smiled in acknowledgement. Despite being a director in the finance department, my interactions with Adam had been very limited over the 2 years I worked in his conglomerate. So his invitation at the end of work today, to dine with him and his wife at their palatial home, was bewildering to say the least. Of course, when your boss is one of the richest, most powerful men in the world, you do not decline. Not even if you have to leave behind your 6-month-old child, who's still breastfeeding, with an unknown babysitter. My only solace was that Adam had sent over a trained nanny, knowing we would have trouble finding someone at the last minute. An unexpectedly kind gesture. So there we were, me and my husband John, across from Adam and his wife Emma, who hadn't said a word the entire time, finishing an exquisite cut of veal, our third course of a long but fairly pleasant night. For a man that wealthy, the lack of servants had come as a surprise to me. Instead, Emma played both waiter and chef, frequently leaving the three of us to converse while she went to the kitchen to cook each course. You can understand then, continued Adam, how a man in my position, with my considerable ego, hates being wrong. He held out his hand to stop the confused protest forming on my lips. What I mean to say is that I considerably underestimated you. It's a rare individual who could steal $1 million from my company and have the balls, metaphorically speaking, to nonchalantly break bread in my home. I froze. John had reached under the table, squeezing my thigh until it hurt. His fear, an echo of mine. We'd been so careful, John and I, when we set up the siphon. Just fractions of dollars, funneled into a shadow bank account. It was meant to be untraceable, given the billions that move through the organization's accounts every year. After all, I'm very good at my job. And we weren't greedy. We'd stopped after we had stolen $1 million. All of it, of course, was for our son, Dylan, a safety net to hedge against the unpredictable world. I don't know, I stuttered, but Adam put his hand up again. Oh, don't worry, I'm not mad. Just disappointed in myself for underutilizing your abilities an entire year. But all that changes today. The money is yours to keep. Consider it a bonus with your promotion. Promotion? I replied, perplexedly. Nothing was making any sense. Anyone who embezzled with such panache is ideally suited to the position of Chief Financial Officer. I am certain you will approach this role with the same talent, dedication and commitment as you did to your scheme, he continued. It's perfect timing too, as the job recently became vacant. I don't suffer failures, Adam intoned coldly. Like quicksilver, his demeanour changed from icy to warm, a bright smile lighting up his face. Now, I hope you enjoyed your meal. Emma prepared it in celebration of your promotion. She's an exceptional chef, don't you agree? Prompted Adam. I had been drowning in my own confusion, but his look of expectation forced a reply from me. Yes, the meal was excellent. I've never tasted anything quite like it. You really must give me the name of your butcher. Adam beamed at the compliment, but Emma just nodded placidly. Unfortunately, that won't be possible. This is a once-in-a-life meal, procured especially for the two of you. Once in a lifetime, you mean? I had automatically corrected. Then I stilled, not knowing how Adam would react. No, he smiled. Once in a life. He gestured at our empty plates. Do you know, I've always been partial to veal. I find that the younger the offspring, the more tender it is, especially when they are still being milk-fed. Your son, Dylan, was only 6 months old, wasn't he? An ideal age to harvest when you want the most succulent meat. Silence is underrated. It keeps the madness at bay, because in that one moment, time stops, and the world you know still is. Silence is also loud, blood rushing to your head, ears ringing in shock, breath raspingly loud, blissfully drowning out the world with its noise. I had to be silent, had to be. I had to hold on to my sanity. John stood up abruptly. What the devil do you mean by that? He yelled. My husband knew, of course. He was a smart man. But as long as the words weren't said out loud, then we both could still pretend our life hadn't yet crumbled. For the first time that night, Emma spoke. I butchered, cooked, and fed you your son, she said detachedly to John. Adam wanted to let your thievery slide, but I insisted. The money is inconsequential, but you, she said, glaring at us with the first sign of emotion I'd seen from her, betrayed his trust, and that cannot go unpunished. A lesson must be taught. Adam smiled lovingly at her words, patting her hand affectionately. I had felt myself spiraling, but made a Herculean effort to keep my emotions from bubbling to the surface. Because if it had won, I would never have stopped screaming. John, however, gave in. He grabbed his steak knife and lunged across the table at Emma, but quick as lightning, Adam calmly plunged a needle into his neck, and he immediately slumped over on the dining table, scattering the dishes and glasses on the floor. Don't worry, it's just a mild sedative. He'll wake up tomorrow feeling well rested. Now, how about we discuss the particulars without further interruptions? Still in shock, I had been incapable of reacting. When you get home, there will be a dead body of an infant in your crib. You will call 911 from your cell phone and only your cell phone. It has been set up so that it registers in the system, but will reroute to a special contact of mine who will handle everything for you. An unfortunate case of SIDs. A common occurrence. Now, when you decide to plot your revenge, I'd like you to keep a few things in mind. First, I am not unaware of how preposterous this incident is, nor how it would appear if you told anyone. A billionaire child-murdering cannibal? That's tabloid trash if you're lucky. No one would take your allegations seriously. In the sliver of chance someone did, it would take the wealth of God himself for you to make a case with any chance of bringing me to trial. Finally, if you ever think of quitting or underperforming at your job in a bid to force me to fire you, remember who I am and the resources at my disposal. Remember that you and John may yet have other children, and that you currently do have nieces and nephews. Children go missing all the time. So, do we understand one another? Asked Adam. I nodded, because it was the only choice I had. Great, he exclaimed. Emma will go fetch the champagne and dessert. Let's talk strategy. The message lit up my phone driving home from work, my wipers thrumming in the soft rain, the blue glow creating a halo around the phone on my dash. It was from Pa, of course, only he typed in all caps as if yelling at the world. No matter how many times I corrected him, he insisted this was the only way anyone would be able to read font tinier than an ant's asshole. I know how much he hated texting, so I gave him a ring. No answer. I waited 5 minutes and tried again. Still no answer. Strange. My Pa hates cell phones. About as useful as a bear with a rifle, he'd say. So he isn't one to use it unless necessary. If he sent a message and I called back, he always picked up on the first ring. Concerned, I took the next exit, deciding to head out to the bunker. My folks are preppers, someone who prepares to survive a major cataclysm they believe to be inevitable. They aren't crazy, but they sure can be odd, especially if you can't look past the living stereotypes of the good souls underneath the peculiar. When I was 12, they decided to build a bunker a few clicks into the old woods that sat at the back of Uncle Bob's cabin. He was Ma's older brother and my favourite family member. Every weekend, all through high school and a fair way into college, they would trudge with their tools into the forest and work on the bunker. It sat on a tract of land on the outskirts of a sprawling forest reserve. Sometimes Uncle Bob lent a hand, and sometimes I did too. But I hated that forest. Hated the chirps, cheeps, and buzzing of invisible insects, the scampering of feet on forest floor from critters I would never catch, but from the side of my eye. One critter in particular made my skin crawl. It made a raspy, grating sound like two pieces of wood slowly rubbed together deliberately. A sound I sometimes heard outside my room when I slept in the cabin. One you could only hear as twilight began to drape the trees in night. A few months ago, when the bunker was complete, my parents decided to rent out our family home and move into it, despite my protests. Why? Ain't I as good as them hobbits you yap on about? A bunker is not a home. Tell him, Ma, I pleaded with my mother. She shrugged and smiled. Home is wherever your pa is, wherever you are, pumpkin. We're getting on in years and don't need much. The bunker gives us something to work on, and it's easier to live in it than haul arse between two places. There ain't no difference between stubborn folk and a mountain, once a thought gets lodged in. Which is why I had to drive to the edge of the woods, and then slog my way through wet mud in growing dark just to check on my parents. Uncle Bob didn't believe in phones either, so calling him to go in my steed would have done a lick of good. The forest was unnervingly quiet in the twilight. Reaching the bunker, I spun the wheel and yanked the hatch door open. The hole looked like a cavernous mouth in the murky earth, eager to swallow me up whole. An abyss gaped at the bottom of the ladder, no light or sound fleeing outside. Ma, Pa, I called out. The inky black swallowed up my words. No reply. I was starting to get scared. My fear of the dark battling against my fear for my parents. It was nearly impossible that there wasn't a light source active. Even if the solar-powered batteries had run dry and the generator failed, there were still candles, gas lamps, and flashlights aplenty. Something had to be extremely wrong for them to be sitting in pitch black and to ignore me. Silently, I thanked Pa for his prepper planning. At my refusal of a go bag, he had brought me a keychain that had a mini flashlight, mini prepper spray, and a compact Swiss Army knife. It was bulky, but over the years had been helpful in unexpected situations. The light from the torch wasn't powerful, but it would adequately cut through the gloom to let me locate my folks. Turning it on, I began cautiously descending the ladder. The bunker was T-shaped, with the trunk housing the living area and kitchen, the right fork with 2 bedrooms and a bath, and the left the pantry, storage and power. I swept the flashlight around the living area and kitchen, but nothing seemed out of place. It all looked perfectly normal, much as I had seen it 2 weeks ago, when I helped them with the move. Ma, Pa, are you all okay? I called out anxiously, still no answer. Walking deeper into the bunker felt like crawling into the depths of an ancient horror. The shadows cloaked me, wrapping me in their embrace, with the only visible part of the bunker being where the poultry lights from my torch illuminated. I couldn't see anything to my left or right, just what was directly ahead. Where the fork split into different sections, I paused, hesitant to pick a path to investigate. The feeling of being watched had been gradually slithering up my spine, and the idea of walking in one direction, only to have something slink up behind me from the other, was starting to trigger my flight response. Just as I made a choice and was about to walk towards the bedrooms, I heard it. A sound like 2 pieces of wood slowly rubbing together deliberately. Pure, numbing terror washed over me. I swung my torch in the direction of the noise, but it took endless seconds of the thing in the dark to creep into the frail light. When I saw what shadows once hid, I began to scream. My parents came towards me, or what was once my parents. A rictus grin frozen on their faces, a smile so wide it would have hurt to hold. Loving eyes now replaced with 2 hollow sockets, from which malice shone dully in its empty depths. Their heads were tilted to the side as if they were somehow curious about what I was. The worst? The worst was the sound, because I finally understood what made it. My parents didn't walk anymore, one foot in front of the other. Instead, each leg lifted straight up from its socket, rotating slowly to come down an inch in front, the arm on the same side mimicking the motion. The sound I'd heard in the forest at night, outside my room, and now from my parents, wasn't that of 2 pieces of wood rubbing together. It was the sound of bone scraping on bone. I stumbled, walking backwards in my fright, but recovered quickly enough to get up and run towards the open hatch door. I heard the sound increase in rhythm as the thing behind me picked up speed. Scrambling up the ladder, I was nearly at the top when I felt a grasping hand on my ankle. Shrieking like a banshee, I kicked back as hard as I could, my leg connecting with its face. Only instead of hitting bone, my foot began to sink into Pa's face, like a foot squelching into soft mud. I was now more panicked than person, and yanking my leg back. I twisted myself around, wrenching my leg free from its grasp. I don't know how I managed it, but I clambered up the ladder backwards at inhuman speed, refusing to turn my back on it. Once outside, I slammed down the hatch and began to run towards my truck. Suddenly, the woods exploded with sound. The rasping, discordant sound of rubbing bone. It enveloped me from all sides, rapidly closing in on my direction. In a last burst of adrenaline, I sprinted to the truck, skidding to a halt. I jumped in and turned the key, thinking that all the gods, with the sweet rattle of my engine, kicked in immediately. The joy was short-lived. My headlights ripped into the darkness, illuminating rows on rows of things in front of me. Hollow sockets sat deep in contorted faces, tilted at an angle. They shambled toward me with their strange walk, attempting to surround the truck. But as the strong glare of my headlights touched them, they rattled in pain, vaulting back up into the comfort of the looming trees. Putting my truck into reverse, I drove at breakneck speed to my Uncle Bob's cabin, ignoring the niggling feeling that I had forgotten something really important. Hammering on the door until Uncle Bob finally opened, I stumbled in and banged it shut, slamming the plank down in front of it. "What in the world, Pumpkin?" explained Uncle Bob in astonishment. Feeling safe for the first time that night, I sat in front of the door and began to cry, as my uncle tried to comfort me despite his confusion. It had finally dawned on me that my parents were dead. My weird, frustrating, wonderful, loving parents were dead. No, worse than dead. They were now monsters. This thought, I began to howl through my tears, unable to really comprehend the depth of what I had lost or how to process what happened. It took an age for my racking sobs to transform into a trickle of tears. Finally, able to catch my breath and speak with a level of normality, I told Uncle Bob what had transpired. He listened patiently while I narrated the events, holding on to his thoughts until I was done. "I don't know what you saw or you think you saw. I ain't saying I don't believe you, far from it. There's a lot in these here woods that are older than folk, and a lot more that are more dangerous. I ain't promising your ma and pa are alright, but it's best I go and look things over, come morning, just to be sure. Now, don't you fret, Pumpkin. What you need is sleep and plenty of it. You head up onto bed, and let's see what the light of day brings us." "Should we call the cops?" I asked. "Don't be an idiot," he replied tersely. "What if your head was just being loony and you decided to bring down the blue on your pa's bunker for no reason? You'd get hiding so fine, it would turn your back into a tot." I smiled weakly at that. Uncle Bob always could chase away my deepest mopes. I kissed him on his cheek and headed up the stairs to the guest room. Which brings us to here, with me sitting in the dark, holding a shotgun. I had been all set to climb into bed, with the niggling sensation at the back of my mind finally wriggled free. Pa had installed a classic bunker hatch door, one that didn't lock properly unless the wheel was spun. In my haste to escape, I'd slammed it down but hadn't turned the wheel. So pushing from underneath would easily lift it open. The things inside the bunker were not trapped there. So while Uncle Bob's going around shuttering windows, locking doors, and dragging furniture to create barricades, I'm typing this out. The lights died a smidge back, and my phone won't call out. Small blessing, I reckon. I've just got enough signal to get out this call for help. If you're willing and aren't afraid, we're in an old brick cabin, inside, forest, 20 clicks past Highway 118. Turn right at the broken tree stump by the creek and drive up the muddy path. There are 4 hours until sunrise, and the sound of bones has steadily grown louder, a dreadful cacophony slowly encircling the cabin. The last message on my phone reads, "Coming home." "You have to be quiet. Your grandmother is asleep in the attic," whispered my mother as we crept through the front door. Why is she being so dramatic? I thought to myself. Why did you wait 17 years to tell me I had a grandmother who lived in a creepy, old backwards house? I demanded of her. My mother shushed me, hurriedly ushering me through the house and into the basement. If the surprise road trip to a surprise house with a surprise grandmother was a strange start to the day, the basement just piled on the weird. Beige padded cloth walls, thick red carpet, giant soft couches supporting a mountain of pillows and clashing prints. This place looks as if a porn set from the 70s had terrible taste. How do you know what a porn set from the 70s looks like? Countered my mother. I rolled my eyes at her. Sometimes I think she believes the internet is a figment of my imagination. This room is soundproof to prevent us from disturbing and waking up your grandmother, she explained. About that, I replied. Why didn't I know I still had a grandmother? I thought she was dead. Are there any other family members you're hiding in the Hicks? Ignoring my snarky tone, my mother answered, Your grandma, she's special. She's not from here. She was a young orphan ferried over from a world away. No name, no money, and no memory. Her life was really hard growing up. This country can be unforgiving to anyone they see as different. Hearing that, there was a twinge of empathy for my grandmother. I've always felt different my entire life, and people could be cruel. But then she met your grandfather, and it was love at first sight for them both. They got married very young, and had me really early. My mother smiled wistfully. We three mostly just had each other this far out. It was a great childhood. Constantly outdoors, helping mom grow food, or helping dad maintain his house. I had hoped for the same when I had you. It didn't skip my notice that my mother had used mom and dad to refer to my grandparents for the first time. Once I moved to the city, I didn't visit as much so I never realized. Your grandmother got sicker the older she got, started to lose her sight and smell, had to take long naps. It was a strain on your grandfather, but he insisted on taking care of her himself, making me promise to do the same if he died first. So on the weekends, when you're with your dad, I come over. Clear up the weeds, stock some food, do the laundry, and now that you're old enough, you can help me, she ended. You still haven't explained why you never told me about her, I retorted. No, I didn't. How about we stop at that diner you like on the way home, and I tell you the rest over pancakes and bacon. For now, just be really quiet as you walk through the house and stay on the ground floor. You can work outside weeding the garden while I finish up the laundry here. She tossed me a pair of gardening gloves, shooing me away. Maybe if I wasn't such a curious, stubborn brat, things would have gone differently that day. But a secret grandmother? How many people would be capable of sauntering off to yank some weeds with a mystery like that left unsolved? Determined to meet her, I headed up to the attic. For an old house, nothing creaked. Climbing the stairs was silent, the carpet dampening my footfalls. As I stood in the hallway to the attic, I struggled to get a clear look at the sleeping form on the bed, the lazy light weakening quickly with the setting sun. Screw her, I thought. Grandma, I said, barely above a whisper. She didn't move. I took a step forward. Grandma? I said loudly. At first, nothing stirred. Then the whisper of sheets being slid from a body. A creak of joints as the figure on the bed sat up straight, head swiveling to the side in a deepening shadows. A harsh groan escaped her as her feet touched the floor, followed by a raspy throttle as my grandmother hunched over on all fours. Her bones cracked and bent all warped, each arm and leg at opposite angles to each other, while her head gradually began twisting around to find the source of the noise. With each jerking twist of her head, I felt myself shrink deeper and deeper into myself, praying she didn't see me, praying that I could be quiet enough to be invisible. When her head had turned completely around, her eyes locked onto mine. No flicker of humanity shone in those primal depths. They were deeper and darker than the infinite night sky. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I barely breathed. She inched spasmodically towards me, the direction of the last sound she heard. Closer and closer. I didn't feel the trickle of urine run down my leg. Closer and closer. A scream started crawling up the back of my throat. Closer and closer. Then she was close enough to smell. Wet, putrid earth underlaid by hints of lavender, mixed with the coppery tang of fetid blood. I nearly broke, but was saved by a loud bang from outside. A hunter's gunshot, perhaps, or a car backfiring on a distant road. It jolted my grandmother into action. She opened her mouth in a silent shriek, almost like the sound had physically hurt her in some way, and bolted to the window, shattering the glass as she jumped through it in pursuit of the source of the noise. It felt like an eternity before I could force myself to move again. When my limbs finally worked, I ran to the basement, hurtling into my mother's arms and sobbing uncontrollably. She held and soothed me like I was 5, not 17, rocking me in her arms. I told her what happened. I told her how sorry I was I didn't listen to her, that I thought I knew better. "It's okay, little lamb," she said, referring to my childhood nickname. "Do you think I wasn't an obnoxious teenager at one point too? The same thing happened to me when I first came back home, but luckily our grandfather was around to befuddle her senses. She wouldn't really hurt kin," he told me then, but he also sounded very uncertain when he said it. However, Grandpa did teach me how to track her and put her back to sleep, and now it's your turn to learn. It'll be hard. She has a really big head start, so we better get hunting. Mom told me this was our family secret, our family curse, and not to tell a soul. But I'm disobeying her again to tell this story, to warn everyone. Whoever you are, wherever you are, please be quiet. My grandfather is awake, and I don't know where she is. I spent my childhood living in a thick forest. All the residents of the area would build houses in scattered groupings. So my family lived towards the top of a small hill with 5 different neighbours' houses, all occupying the same 3-acre space. Living out there meant we had a pretty carefree lifestyle. Being rural meant we didn't have an HOA or anything like that. Our yards were free to have whatever we wanted. Some people had workshops set up out of sheds. One woman, Miss Briggs, made statues out of metal. Her whole yard was littered with scrap. We even set up a communal garden that all the neighbours could use. Us kids, there were 7 of us, were allowed to roam the surrounding area freely. During the fall and spring, we were homeschooled by our mothers. There was a creek nearby where we could swim in the summer. We'd explore the woods in search of wildflowers and pine cones. We were out there so much that we made a big fort from fallen tree branches we collected. However, there was one rule that everyone who lived in the forest had to follow. We couldn't step foot on the ground outside when it rained. None of us ever really understood the rule. At first, I was especially curious about it. Perhaps it was because I knew the adults had to follow it too. The idea of adults having to follow rules was unfathomable to me. I thought they made the rules, so couldn't they just change them? I asked my parents about it a lot, but they always shut me down. They would tell me that they didn't have to justify their reasons because they were in charge. As long as everyone obeyed, we didn't need to know why the rule existed. So, for many years, none of us did put too much thought into it. Everything was uneventful. Our days followed a regular pattern: breakfast, school, lunch, chores, playtime, and dinner. On rainy days, we were just kept inside to play. Our parents watched the news very regularly to keep tabs on the weather, but sometimes rain would come as a surprise. One of these surprise rains came when I was 14. Several of the adults had gone into town for dinner and a movie. They left in the late afternoon, around 3 p.m. Us kids were split up amongst 2 houses. Being one of the oldest, I was in charge of 3 of the younger kids. Sammy, Evan, and Trixie were their names. Sammy was Evan's older sister. She was 10, and he was 8. Trixie was Miss Biggs's daughter, and she was 3. With the house next door, Nelson, who was 16, was in charge of his 2 younger siblings, Victoria, who was 9, and Owen, who was 5. At first, everything went smoothly. I put on a movie for Sammy and Evan, complete with some microwave popcorn. Then, I set Trixie up at the kitchen table to watch some toddler show with the headphones and portable DVD player Miss Briggs sent over. Once all three of the kids were situated, I flopped down on the couch and started texting Nelson to see how he was doing. We chatted back and forth for a while, until I heard a familiar pitter-patter on the tin roof of our house. I looked out the kitchen window, and sure enough, it was beginning to rain. My phone rang then. My mom was calling. I stepped down the hallway to answer, since I didn't want to worry the others. "You guys are all inside, right?" she asked. Her voice had an undertone of panic. "Yes, Mom, we're all inside," I said. I heard a sigh with relief, and tell the other adults. "We're going to play it by ear for now, since we haven't even finished dinner yet. But if it keeps raining like this, we'll have to stay at a hotel or something until it stops." I told her that I understood, and we quickly finished the call. I sent a quick message to Nelson to make sure he knew what was going on. Then went to read some magazines. A few hours later, I made the kids some chicken nuggets with mac and cheese. While they were eating, I heard what sounded like yelling, coming from outside. I stepped out onto the porch and looked next door. Nelson and Owen were standing on the front steps, getting pelted by the raindrops. It looked like Owen was crying. "But Mr. Fluff is out there," he cried. Nelson was kneeled down and trying to console his brother. I scanned their front yard and saw that Owen's favourite stuffed animal was on the hood of their dad's truck. Owen kept trying to get it, but Nelson was holding him back. The rain started coming down harder, and the 5-year-old wailed at the top of his lungs. By this point, the 3 kids at my house, as well as Nelson's sister, came out to see what was happening. Little Trixie whimpered when some thunder boomed overhead, so I picked her up and propped her on my hip. Owen's sobbing continued until Nelson hoisted him over his shoulder and carried him back inside the house. I ushered Sammy and Evan inside my house as well. Since it was a little after 7 p.m. at this point, I went ahead and changed Trixie into her pajamas and laid her down to sleep in my bed. Luckily, she dozed off without any fuss. When 8:30 rolled around, I told the other 2 to get ready for bed and took them into their sleeping bags on my bedroom floor. I texted my mom to let her know that everything was good. She told me that they were getting a hotel and that the rain was supposed to be over by morning. I must have dozed off on the couch, because what I remember next is waking up to a loud slam from outside. My phone's clock said it was 11:37 p.m. I grabbed a small flashlight from our entry table drawer and stepped out onto the porch to see if maybe a raccoon had toppled over one of the trash cans. Both were still upright, so I turned back to the front door. As I did, I caught a quick glimpse of another flashlight beam in my peripheral. I looked over and saw Owen stepping over his front steps, his lights on the stuffed animal on the truck. I looked frantically around for something I could use. Our feet couldn't touch the ground, but judging from our porches and steps, our feet could touch other things so long as they were between our feet and the ground. I spotted the pair of 5-gallon buckets that our mom used to carry soil to and from the garden. I snatched them both up and bolted down our porch steps. I reached out as far as I could and set the first bucket down with the bottom in the air. I carefully stepped into it. It wiggled at first, so I had to regain my balance. I did the same thing with the second bucket, using them almost like stepping stones between the set of porch steps. I jumped from the second bucket to the bottom step in front of Owen. He jerked back and shrieked. I grabbed him and jogged back up to his front door, kicking it open with my foot. Nelson must have heard the commotion because he met me in the living room. I passed his brother over. He was going for Mr. Fluff, I panted. I leaned over to catch my breath for a second, and that's when I heard it. My house's screen door creaked open and then slammed shut. I raced back outside. Trixie was standing at the top of the steps, rubbing at her eyes with little fists. "I had a bad dream," she whined when she spotted me. She started making her way down the steps. I worked my way onto the first bucket I could reach, but the distance between it and Nelson's porch was wider than that of my own. By the time I finally got balanced, Trixie was at our bottom step. "Trixie, honey, stay there. Stay on the steps," I said frantically. Her face twisted up and she let out a small sob. "I want to hold your hand," she said through tears. Before I could speak again, she took one final step. As soon as her bare foot touched the wet dirt, the rumbling started. It was a low and deep sound that vibrated through the air. I realized that it was getting louder, closer. I hopped off the bucket and sprinted to Trixie. I yanked her into my arms and got one foot onto the porch steps when I felt something grab my boot. I clung to Trixie, pulling as hard as I could until my boot slid off. I fell onto the porch steps with a thud. Behind me, I heard a strange, throaty sound. I scrambled past the porch door and flicked the lights. Outside was a creature like I'd never seen before. It had long, spindly arms that tapered off into needle-like fingers that held my boot. Its torso was unnaturally thin, maybe 10 inches around at the thinnest point, and its head was shaped like a cone with a sharp point at the top. The porch light illuminated its pale, pinkish skin. It had huge eyes that were completely pitch black, but no mouth or nose. As it stared through the screen of the door, it started making that throaty sound again, something between a grunt and a growl. I kept Trixie's face pressed against my shoulder to keep her from looking up at the creature. It was like time froze. The only movement came from the creature as it swayed back and forth, almost like a serpent, staring at me with those obsidian eyes. Finally, it sunk back into the damp earth, not leaving so much as a small hole when it went. I breathed a sigh of relief and took Trixie back to bed. I didn't fall back asleep that night. I never did tell my parents what happened that night, and Trixie didn't seem to remember. The rain had stopped sometime after midnight, and I'd picked the buckets up the following morning before the adults got back. Nelson and Owen never told their parents anything either, probably because they didn't want to get into trouble. It's been almost 15 years since that day, and now I live in a suburb far from that forest I grew up in. I have my own 2 kids now. Even though I'm hundreds of miles away, I still find that whenever we leave the house in the rain, I stare anxiously at the ground under my children's feet.